Alrighty, so it's time to talk about the New York team in the season preview, starting off with the New York Redbulls, who obviously this upcoming season, they're kind of on a bit of a redemption tour after last season, just so close of finally ending That's So Metro narrative, finally winning their first MLS Cup and matching their inner city rival in terms of the same amount of MLS Cup that is. Though despite that, as I've said about this team when it comes to their their moving forward series. It's one thing to, of course, make it to MLS Cup, but it's another to try to make it back to back year, especially with the way that they are. They have some really good team in the Eastern Conference this season that they're going to have to go against, and the fact that I'm pretty sure this time they're not going to have the benefit of pretty much the Eastern Conference simply completely collapsing on itself with all the favorites losing in the first round. But that being said, last season was an absolute Cinderella run for this team. They finished in 7 with an 11, 14, and 9 record and finished with 47 points. I mentioned before, this team was a dead man walking heading into the playoffs. They had no momentum whatsoever. It was pretty much a second half collapse by this team, and yet against all odds, they somehow made it all the way to MLS Cup, just to show you the craziness that we saw in the Eastern Conference last season. But unfortunately, they fell short in the end, losing to the Galaxy in MLS Cup that is. The head coach, of course, is Sandro Schwartz. He's been there since 2024, and the sporting director is Julian de Guzman, who actually was introduced not long ago in 2024 as well. Now, looking at some of the signings that they made this offseason, not really much signing, and definitely not as much as compared to what we saw with the New England Revolution. To be fair, I don't think any team is going to match what the Revs did this offseason when it comes to their roster turnover. But first of all, they brought in Omar Valencia from their MLS Next Pro team before signing a homegrown in Andre Mimiti. Knowing the Red Bulls and their homegrown talent, he could be a superstar player for this team by the end time. And then we get to some of the more notable signings. So first of all, they got Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting of the free transfer. This is probably the biggest signing that they made this off season, and in some ways it's kind of a bit of a gamble for them to decide to sign him, and not to mention I think he also is labeled as a designated player as well. Don't get me wrong, Choupo-Moting is very good, especially during his time with PSG and Bayern Munich. But still, for a guy that is approaching his mid 30s, I mean, you don't know whether or not if he still have enough in the tank in terms of that production. And as I also will talk about, with the big concern about this team when it comes to their top end talent, can those top end talent stay healthy? Because when you look at all their top end talent, some of these players have had problem when it comes to staying healthy. But the other big signing they made was Alexander Hack as one of their center back signing, and a guy to replace Andres Reyes going to San Diego FC. Then they also got Victor Bokush transferred from Media's Lignica. And then they, of course, got Raheem Edwards off of free agency. But then they also brought back Tim Parker off a free agent. Now, obviously, I don't think he's going to be a regular starter for this Red Bull side. But one thing I will say is that he's definitely going to bring some good locker room presence. And it's a bit of a nostalgia kind of signing because, Tim Parker, he's been with this club as a homegrown going back to a couple of years ago, and it's pretty kind of a bittersweet kind of moment of him returning to the place that his started his career, and once again be the leader of this team to hopefully guide this team on another deep playoff run. And then another big signing that really kind of fly under the radar, but this is a huge signing when it comes to replacing one of their biggest losses this offseason. And that, of course, is getting Marcelo Morales, who, of course, was transferred from Universidad de Chile. From what I heard, he's a very decent player, has represented the Chilean national team as well. And this is a big get because one of the biggest losses that they have this off season. I actually didn't even write it on here. That's how you know it's a big loss when I even forgot to put him on the out list. But yeah, the biggest loss they lost this off season is John Token, who is going to Holstein Kiel in the Bundesliga, and that we knew that there was going to be a time where eventually the Red Bulls are going to cash in on John Token being probably the most most highly touted player out of all those youngster in this Red Bulls team. I didn't think it was going to be this winter off season, and I especially feel like they probably could have gotten more than the 3 million that they had. Though that being said, he is a fullback. I guess they do get less value compared to if you decide to sell a player that play on the attacking end. But nevertheless, for the talent that he has, I thought he would go at least 5 or even $6 million. But getting Marcelo Morales, I think that's a good replacement for him. I mean, he's obviously going to have a lot of big shoes to fill in terms of what John Tolkien means to this team. But there's no doubt that again, with his experience already with the Canadian national team, and from what I heard, seems like he's a very decent player. He could be a good replacement for the spot that John Tolkien left. Another player that no longer on this team, including Corey Burke, his option was declined, and the same goes with Aiden O'Connor. Andres Reyes, of course, move on to San Diego FC, and then Ilias went well, traded to RSL as well. We also had the retirement of Ryan Mayer, forever a club legend for this team. I'm surprised they haven't even announced him to get a front office role because he's pretty much Mr. Red Bulls. He's been with this team the longest out of any Red Bulls player. He's been pretty much through it all when it comes to the Red Bulls. Even going back to the days when they had some very well known players with the likes of Thierry Henry and Tim Cahill. I'm pretty sure you probably have heard of those players before. And then of course the other big sell that they of course made this offseason is decide to move on from Dante Vanzier. So this has been a dilemma for them for a while, whether or not if they're gonna move on from him or not. I mean, he's been pretty disappointing ever since he came into the league, both on and off the field that is, and no doubt that they just decided to cut their losses here. And this also kind of makes an interesting discussion of whether or not if they maybe even going to try to look for a replacement. I mean, for some people might say, well, Choupo-Moting might be that replacement, but Sandro Sports at times likes to play a two striker system. So do they maybe think about getting a DP number 9? And as I mentioned in just a bit, it seems like that they might already have an idea of who they're going to be targeting for the remaining of this off season. But look at the first 5 games for the Red Bulls. They start off by playing against Cincinnati on the road before playing Nashville at home. Then they go on the road to play against Atlanta United before returning home to face against Orlando City in the rematch of the Eastern Conference Final, that is. And then they play against Toronto FC to finish off the first five games. So there are definitely some easy games out there. Definitely some tough game, especially the rematch we will see on March 15th, and also going on the road to face against a revitalized Atlanta United side. But the last 5 games, they go on the road to play against the Timbers before going on the road to play against Montreal. Then they got the New York Derby on September 27th, the second edition that is, and relatively late to have a New York Derby as well. Similar to last year, they kind of had a New York Derby around September, and I'm pretty sure Red Bulls fans would not want to remember that New York Derby that happened in September. They want to remember more of that New York Derby that happened in the playoffs against NYCFC. But after that, they play against FC Cincinnati in their final home game, and then for the last game of the season, they once again face against the Columbus Crew on the road. I had to actually double check to make sure that is the case because again, I know the league have been recycling opponents when it comes to who they face in decision day. I mean, I feel like I've seen the same matchup that I've seen a couple of years back, but no way in the world we're seeing another matchup 2 years in a row where the Red Bulls plays against Columbus. But this time, unlike last time when it was all at home, this time it's going to be at Lower Dot-Com Field to finish their season. Now, look at the strength of this team. So this team is very well balanced all around the pitch. I would say the goalkeeping situation might be a big question because Carlos Cornell, he didn't really had a spectacular year last season. I think they're really banking that he can bounce back this season, especially I say he had a bad year last year. He actually had a spectacular playoffs, except what happened in MLS Cup. Yeah, let's not talk about what that in MLS Cup of how poor of a performance he has, including the first goal that he gave up. Probably shouldn't have. That's one that he probably should have saved on Joseph Paint so shot. But there's no doubt that that's maybe the only area that they might be concerned, other than the fact that their defense is really good. Even with the loss of Andres Reyes, this defense is still relatively decent. The midfield, of course, is the same thing, and then of course on the attacking end, again talking about the front three with this team with potentially guys like you promoting Emil Frostberg and Lewis Morgan as the front three. It'll be very interesting to see if they can live up to their potential, and not to mention the health of this team as well, because I think that might be the biggest weakness of this team, where they don't really have a lot of depth when it comes to covering their front three ever since the sale of Elias Manuel and Corey Burke, and the fact that I don't know if all three of those guys are going to be staying healthy for out the entire season. I mean, those three guys I mentioned are guys that have had injury issue before, and it would be pretty much almost a miracle if one of those guys are able to play for almost the entire season. I think one of those guys are probably going to be suffering some injury concern, but yeah, that's going to be a thing that they might need to still look at for the remaining of the off season. But going back to what I said about them potentially getting another DP player and maybe a DP number 9, that is. Well, there's been a lot of rumor that they might be getting Timo Werner uh from Tottenham this off season. Now, obviously, it's not surprising that they decided to go with Timo Werner, consider he's played with another Red Bulls team. He's been with RB Leipzig. He will reunite with Emil Forsberg with the Red Bulls. That is, and the Red Bulls always tends to like to bring in players that is part of their other Red Bulls own club, that is. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether they can bring him this off season, or maybe even in the summer transfer window as well. I mean, they don't necessarily need to spend a DP straight away on a forward. I mean, I think Triple Moting will do well. For at least for the most part in the first half of the season. But that being said, going back to the depth of this team, maybe they'll think about getting some of that from some of the academy players, and also some of the MLS Next Pro player, because we know one thing about the New York Red Bulls. When it comes to depth, they don't really need too much of it, because they have a lot of depth. Consider how good when it comes to their academy is, and there's a lot of guys that they're in the academy that can fill in those top end talent if they needed to be. But in the case of Timo Werner and why they want to bring him, this again goes back to what I said of whether or not if Sandro Schwartz want to play a two striker system. Can the final three, or the front three, that is, stay healthy, and will the kids, of course, step up? Well, I just kind of also got ahead of myself when it comes to the second big question as well. I think the kids will definitely stepped up for this team, but the question with the front three staying healthy, that is going to be a big question, and the answer to that question could be most likely no. I think one of those players are gonna probably suffer some injuries, considering they have had some injury concern in the past as well. And then lastly, I think the last big question, I know this is a bit of a cliche with the New York Red Bulls, and I know Red Bulls fans don't want to hear it, but unfortunately, this is a question that's been asked every single season for the Red Bulls, and that of course is, will the That So Metro narrative come back this season in the playoffs? So, well, last season, I know losing in MLS Cup, you could say maybe that's a That's So Metro moment because of the Cinderella run that they had, and then they do that in MLS Cup. I don't think so. I don't think that was really considered that so Metro moment, considered they never led in that game against the Galaxy, and they put up a hard fight against a team that was heavily favored to win that MLS Cup. But with that being said, again, this team has had their history of choking. I mean, we talk about the That So Metro narrative, pretty much just kind of explain why this team has has been so frustrating to watch, because it's not about how they finish in the regular season. You know that this team is going to make it to the playoffs. They still have the longest active streak out of any team right now in MLS, but it really doesn't matter if they find ways to choke in the playoffs. And as we've seen before in past time, especially after they made it to MLS Cup back in 2008. Guess what happened the very next year that they made it to MLS Cup? They did not make it to the playoffs, and I'm pretty sure Red Bulls fans are hoping that's not going to be the case. But after that, it kind of once again start the cycle again of them choking in the earlier rounds and never get it done, even with the talent that they had. So I wonder whether or not, if last year was just kind of an outlier, and maybe it seems like the program are basically resumed heading into this season. I mean, for Red Bulls fans' sake, hopefully that is not the case. Hopefully they'll make another deep playoff run and get themselves back to a similar uh situation that they were last season, but it's not going to be easy whatsoever because again, if there is a conference that is really hard to repeat out of both of them, it's got to be the Eastern Conference. The East is really tough to trying to go back and hope to to reach to MLS Cup once again because when you look at the past couple of years, there's always tends to be a different team out of the East that reach MLS Cup. Last year we saw with the Red Bulls, the previous year we saw with Columbus, and then prior year we saw the Union, of course, did it, and then in 2021 we did see NYCFC made it as well. So again, it just it feels like it's always different teams that make it, and we'll see whether or not that cycle can continue heading into this season as well. But there's no doubt the expectation of this team, the expectation is still going to be sky high of this team. The playoffs is not just only a bare minimum expectation, but maybe they might think about winning a trophy as well. I mean, I think that would be one thing that would at least satisfy this fan base. The fact that, with all the tortures that they've been going through in the playoffs, winning a trophy will really help this team and also help the youngster as well. Because I feel for a lot of these youngster, doing very well with this team, but just never able to get to the mountaintop of winning a trophy. Whether, of course, if the trophy means the Leeds Cup or even the U.S. Open Cup, it really doesn't matter. This team is definitely looking to try to win one. It's hard to believe they have not won a trophy since they won the Supporters Shield in 2018, and that was part of the dominance that they had when it comes to the Supporters Shield, winning three in 6 seasons. That is, but there's no doubt that this team is hungry to win a trophy, and this is definitely a team that can do so if that high end talent on the attack can produce. But there you have it. That is pretty much it by doing the season preview of the New York Red Bulls. As always, let me know in the comments below if you're a Red Bulls fan. What do you think is the strength, the weakness, and the three big question? And the expectation is heading into this season. Of course, the next season preview, we're going to look at their inter-city rival that is New York City FC, also known as NYCFC. But yeah, until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.